Hello, everyone. How's it going? Can you all hear me? Let me know if that's all coming through all right. Let me just double check everything here. That seems good. Ba-ba-ba. Welcome, John. Howdy. Dundas, no worries. You can watch it later if you want, or don't, if you don't want. Welcome, Colt, Zach, Puzzleheaded, Anthony. How's everyone doing? It's been a little while since the last one, so Sherlock Bones is back on the case. You liked Midra because you beat him first try and didn't have to retry. Based. All the best bosses are the ones you beat the first try. Glad you're enjoying it, Anthony. Oh, welcome, Benny. Thank you. Ladore. Thank you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay, so where are we? So we've basically covered everything in Limgrave so far. There's just two little things, and I went around a little bit off stream to cover some stuff. I did some of the extra little catacombs that I didn't feel were worth doing on stream. We'll look at some catacombs on stream, but maybe the more interesting ones. Welcome, Ray. So the only things left to do in Limgrave are... put one there. Are getting up to the that little warping chest, which takes us to Lendell. The Stranded Graveyard, which I do want to do, but maybe once I find some other stuff related to the Banished Knights and Dragon Communion, so that there's some thematic connection there. And then fighting Elemer. And I believe that would be everything. I don't remember if I did all the Knights Cavalry. That would be the only other thing. So let me just quick check that. We have the Flail, so that one was there. And then... was it an Ash of War that one drops? Which I have. I don't remember what the other one drops. So that's pretty much all of Limgrave. So here's my plan. I really want to get to the Shadowlands, and not kind of get through the entire game before doing that. So my thought is there are some nice parallels that we could do, kind of going alongside base game and DLC. So I'm thinking Liurnia and Raya Lucaria, it would be interesting to do that side by side with sort of Castle Ensis and some of the more Carrion related, you know, Rolana stuff. What about Divine Tower? That's a really good point. Did not do the Divine Tower. Thank you for reminding me about that. So that's another thing to do in Limgrave. But my thought is doing sort of some of the stuff in the DLC, like Castle Ensis, alongside maybe Raya Lucaria, and then doing some of Mesmer's stuff alongside Mount Gelmir. So we've got sort of a thematic connection looking at moon stuff, and then we'll be looking at snake stuff. So what that means is, you know, I might make my way a little bit into Liurnia just so I can actually get into the DLC and do Vare's stuff. But for now, I'm going to move into Caelid a little bit. I'm going to move into Caelid a little bit. Honestly, probably I'll go to Abandoned Cave to get the Golden Scarab, go to Fort Faroth and get some easy levels so that I'm a bit more I'm a bit more comfortable getting into the DLC early, and then sort of head down towards Radon and do that. So the next few streams will probably be just kind of prepping and getting into the DLC. I won't be quite so methodically going through everything, because I really want to get to the DLC and talk about some of the stuff there. Welcome, Black Man, of no renown. Thank you. So, yes, we should do the Divine Tower, however. That is a good point. Because that is a really odd structure. I just watched a video by Nameless Singer, which I really enjoyed, about the Rao civilization, and it was very convincing. I have to say, I think I pretty much just believe everything that was in that video. Sort of about how the Rao civilization was the precursor to the astrologers, and had this relationship with the giant civilization. Very good. I asked for tinfoil videos. Have I checked them out? Yeah, I've checked out some of them, not all of them. There were a couple that I liked in there, so I appreciate that. And that's an open request for anyone who's in the Discord server. If you want to give me schizo videos, my feeling on the lore right now is, I believe we have enough information to basically solve the big picture of the game. I don't know if we can solve every little thing, but I think we can solve the big picture. But there's so many moving parts that the only way that's going to happen is we basically need to come up with the right narrative that fits to get everything together. It's not going to be just sort of, going from point A to point B and like connecting something to something else. That might lead you somewhere, but that's not going to be it. There's going to have to be a sort of grand narrative, and people are going to have to come up with those things. And I think we will get to a point where there is one grand narrative that really successfully ties everything together. But it's going to be hard to come up with that. Rao seems very old-ass civilization in general. Seems to be pre-meteor / great lava disaster. I think it's tricky to know where Rao sits in relation to the... We've basically got 3 super ancient civilizations. Rao, Ould, and the dragons. And it's kind of hard to figure out how those relate to each other, because there's basically no direct connection. But given how pervasive the Rao ruins are, I mean, just that they're in absolutely everywhere in the lands between, and they're like within the earth itself. I suspect that is probably the oldest. Although, if you look at the Miyazaki tropes, if you look at everything from that lens, that would predict that the dragons are before anything else. And then there's kind of all the stuff with being outside of time, which complicates things, but... Ull probably came after lava disaster with the ships showing Elden John. Do the ships show Elden John? I didn't think that they... like the bull ships? Is that what you're talking about? I mean, one thing with those stone coffins would be... the sort of natural conclusion to jump to there is that they're coffins for giants. Oh yeah, if you're talking about the Ool, like sort of monolith thing with all the pictures on it. I think Tarnished Archaeologist showed the coffin ships had Elden John. That would be interesting if that were true. I know that there's the little like stone monuments in the Ool ruins, the reliefs. Yeah, thank you. Which depict what seem to be ships, and they seem to resemble the stone coffins. What other chats are you reading other than YouTube? No, I'm just on YouTube. Just on YouTube. This is kind of interesting because Anastasia is one of these things where, like, my first impression is, oh, this is just like a silly little thing. It's like Maneater Mildred from Dark Souls, or Miranda. It's just a, it's just some little like fun thing that Miyazaki likes to put in the games. Weird little woman with a butchering knife. But now, I'm wondering if there's actually more significance to Anastasia, given what the butchering knife means. And especially considering that, two other things. One is that the butchering knife, by default, has a sacred affinity on it. And two, that she appears in the Hermit Village? She's in one of those villages that's like with the demi-humans that it resembles. It resembles the like windmill village, which is like the shaman village. So I'm wondering if there's something more going on with her. I don't know why she's eating Tarnished. Or why... Yeah, up on the way to Gelmir, exactly. She appears there. I also don't know why she's dressed like a finger maiden. And also why she drops a somber ancient dragon smithing stone when you kill her the third time. Isn't she a Volcano Manor person? I mean, the fact that she's hunting Tarnished could indicate that, but... not sure. Not sure. I don't think there's any direct connection between her and the Volcano Manor. Right, except that she's hunting Tarnished and eating them. Eating Tarnished is relevant to the Volcano Manor, yeah. Finger maiden things to lure in Tarnished. Oh, welcome the discerning Tarnished. So, Missionary's Cookbook. Now, I believe this was either in 1.0 or in some early version. Bernal's maiden was here, and she was trying to burn herself to be the kindling maiden. It was very, like, creepy. I believe this is where it was. If she eats Tarnished, that could imply she either thinks they're inconsequential, she existed before they came about, or she wants to absorb their power because she does see them as important. Yeah. I mean, again, my first instinct, basically up until the DLC, was that, you know, not worth reading too much into her, and that may still be true, but, you know, given how important the butchering knife, at least the Bonnie butchering knife is, it now kind of recontextualizes that. So let's talk to this little guy over here. Nascent butterfly. Interesting. It's rotting. Yes, yes, I can see that. The very earth that Caelid rests upon, and Celia, town of sorcery. The end is nigh for us all. What's the best way to contact me? If you're in the Discord, there should be a link in the description for this stream. You can find me there. You just sort of ping me. I don't remember what my Discord handle is exactly. Or on Twitter, I'm at Mr. Elden Thing. That's another way to contact me. So let's just take a look at these guys, because what an incredible design. I love these dudes. God, just like the worst nightmare fuel. Is it gold? Or just like a weird bruise? There's something almost humanoid about them. Like the proportions or something. The way they stand. Very creepy. Oh, do they have 4 toes? Oh, yeah. 4 toes. Bad sign. Velka cold. Yeah. One of my favorite little details in Dark Souls is that the Velka's rapier makes a little V when you cut. I love that. It's like his little signature move. V for Velka. Yeah, these guys are so weird. And clearly the idea is... Let's look at a dog real quick. They're going to be all glitchy unless I get closer. But the fact that the birds have teeth and that they've got sort of fur, right? There's like feathers, but then there's also fur. It's like they're kind of almost part dog as well. The tiny wings, their flight was taken. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I think the creepiest part is the tiny eye in like that really large eye socket. That's probably the creepiest part of them. That's such a great design choice. Vultures have fur? Yeah, it could just be like downy feathers, but then they have teeth as well. Like birds don't have teeth, so crows don't need teeth in an evolutionary regard. I don't really know what that means. They don't need teeth. I mean, a beak is kind of like it serves the function of a tooth. You know, being able to tear flesh. Yeah. Mutation, but not an evolution. Yeah. The Scarlet Rot... Well, the thing is, I'm not sure if the Scarlet Rot is what is responsible for this, because these guys also exist in the mountaintops. So clearly there was a connection, I think, between the mountaintops and Caelid at some point. Given that you have the enormous skulls, you have the titans, the old gods, you have the crows and the dogs. But I wouldn't immediately jump to assuming that like these weird gigantic creatures are the way they are because of the Scarlet Rot, because there doesn't seem to be any rot in the mountaintops, although you could argue that maybe there once was, but now that it's all cold, maybe that stopped it. Nah, there's ways you can make it work, but at least on the face of it, I would chalk this more up to just sort of, yeah, mutations, evolution, weird life being blended or separated in various ways. So, let's see. It's that they needed to pad out the mountaintops and couldn't make more content. I don't know. I mean, they could have put all sorts of. I mean, that is certainly true. Like I think it's definitely true that the mountaintops received less attention than it should have, in the design of the game because it was later. But you still have to think about it from the developer's perspective. Like, they could have put a whole bunch of other different types of enemies in there. They chose to put those in. Now, why? Maybe it's just because they wanted to have a bunch of big things, trolls, giant dogs, and giant birds. I mean, this is I always get slightly frustrated with this line of argument. This is sort of the same thing that whenever I tried to talk about Godfrey, it's like, yeah, of course, logistics and like, asset reuse and stuff. Of course, this is a reason for doing certain things, obviously, but that doesn't preclude there being, lore and narrative around it. Those are not mutually exclusive. Like, imagine you're designing this game and you've got this empty area, you got to fill it in. It's like, oh well, okay, we can't design a whole bunch of new creatures to put in there. Okay, well then you're still faced with the issue of, well, what do you pick? What do you pick to actually populate the mountaintops with? And like, okay, you put golems there. That makes sense because it's the Rao ruins are there. You put bats there. Well, the bats are always around the ruins. So you put finger creepers there. That's a weird one. I have no idea what's going on there. But like, they could have put all. There's hundreds of different enemy types in Elden Ring. They could have chosen all sorts of different things. So they chose those ones. They didn't design something new because of logistics, but they chose the ones that they did for certain reasons. And it's clearly not, the reasons aren't just because of gameplay. It's not because, like, oh, we really want you to fight some giant birds and dogs, because like, gameplay wasn't the primary concern in the mountaintops design, because they didn't really, it received, I think, less attention. So that means that the reason that they did choose the things that they did, there's something more narrative going on there. Um, the only giant dog with a seeming owner is Gowrie, who also happens to be a servant of Rot. That's true. That might suggest there's more of a connection there. Also 4 toes, but 5 fingers. Is that right? Yeah. Oh, and giant dragonflies, yes. Giant stuff. We never really looked at these carriages, actually. So these are clearly coffins. But why are these everywhere? Isn't really any defining... Those look like little people. It's kind of hard to see them, though. It's so worn down. That looks like someone wearing a crown. Looks like someone praying. That looks like a skull surrounded by... what? Fire? Petals, maybe? Leaves, maybe? We looked at them approaching morn? I don't remember that. Yeah, I wish I could see better what was going on here, because these do look like... almost, I want to say, similar to the Ool reliefs, but I think this is a different style. It's not too dissimilar from, like, the Noxian style, though. Is that just rust, or is that meant to be, like, slightly smoldering? I guess just rust. If this were remade by Bluepoint, we'd be able to see clearly. Yeah. Did I see this right? That there's talks of Dark Souls 3 remaster? Anything inside? No. Just a great sword. The guy that leaked is super unreliable. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I see these rumors every 5 seconds, so I wasn't sure whether to believe anything. Okay, for now, we're just gonna run past all these guys. We'll grab the greatsword later. They're eating some Radon soldiers. Don't these coffin carriages always have weapons in them? Yeah, my impression is it's sort of, you know, they're like funeral carriages with old heroes in them, and so they have some, yeah, the weapon of the person being carried. There is something here in the Ra about, like, these branched sort of dead trees that keep on popping up, because they're all over. Like, once you get up, you see it's just filled with these spiky branches like that. No, a lot of them aren't loaded in yet, but here you can see it, and that looks similar to Deathroot to me. It's curious because the minor Erd trees aren't dead. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Both of the minor Erd trees are fine. The dead ones, there's the dead one in Gelmir, and then the only other ones are Consecrated Snowfield and mountaintops. Giant dogs and crows seem to have overlarge bones, especially considering their small eyes. So could it be these titan bones were also originally smaller? Rot makes bones grow or something? That's possible, but since in the DLC we got these, we got the Ancient Meteoric Greatsword, and that is supposed to be an arrowhead. To me, that feels like it's the right size for these guys. Yeah, and then you have the problem of the mountaintops again, where there doesn't seem to be any rot, and those guys are still there. And also, you just have a general theme of things being bigger in the past. You know, you have Grand Sax for, you have like the fire giants versus the trolls. You have a lot of like this fractal stuff going on. Like, okay, you have the Erd tree, then you have the minor Erd trees, and then like in Limgrave and stuff, you have just like little trees with golden leaves. I think there's a lot of that going on. You even have like the vulgar militia. They're smaller. There's something about, you know, people who have less grace. Like, I think it's the page set that says something about people who have less grace are smaller, or it was thought that they had less grace or something. So there is this trend of things being, of having these various sizes that I think is important. So I would guess, and also it wouldn't be obvious to me what would be gained narratively by having a bunch of bones that had like grown overly large. Whereas I could see something gained narratively by having these enormous skeletons that give you this sense that like there's something way, way in the ancient past before anything that we even know about. There's still a story here. However, Radon did seem to get bigger once. It's not clear whether it was the rot itself or whether it was like the mad taint of his runes or something. Weren't there giant flaming skulls everywhere in a test or something? Yeah, the bald monk. There were like enormous bald monk statues which had smoldering heads. That was really weird. Radon also ate people. True. Maybe that's why he's big, because he was eating. That actually seems pretty clear, yeah. The Radon timeline is inconsistent? Well, I don't know what's inconsistent about it. It seems pretty straightforward to me. Like you have the, in Morgoth's cutscene, you have a pretty normal, like, kind of largish size throne, for Radon, but he's nowhere near as big as he is now. So it's clearly he became bigger after that. So early on, I think in the Shattering, it had to be either just, well, yeah, based on the trailers, assuming that those are canonical, it would have to be like after the beginning of the Shattering War and before he fought Melania that he became sort of large. So actually that would mean it wasn't the rot that made him bigger, assuming the trailer is canonical. Who is this guy's god / Elden Lord? I don't know if the Elden Ring existed at this point. I think we have to question when the Elden Ring became a thing. I mean, one thing about the Elden Ring that I've been thinking about is like the Norse myths, and you know, there's the ring cycle, which I'm actually mostly familiar with via opera, because that's my background. You know, so Wagner wrote this opera, Der Ring des Nibelungen, which is based on the Poetic and Prose Eddas, and in that story, the gods. Well, first of all, the ring is forged because this dwarf named Albrich steals gold from the River Rhine, and then he forges it into a ring to have absolute power. And then the ring gets passed forward and backwards, and it's always cursed so that people kill each other around it and because of it. But it just starts out as just like gold in the river. So it's not something that has always existed. And I think something might like that. It also has to do with the gods betraying the giants in that story, and I wonder if that's relevant. It could be the Great Rune or just his natural gigantism or something. It would also, with Radon, you know, I'm kind of back on the train that Radigan was a fire giant. And if that were true, that could explain Radon's size. He just grew big because he's part giant. But yeah, I'm kind of back on that train, I think. So, have you considered he just ate a lot? I mean, yeah, it could be as simple as that. Could be as simple as that. I mean, that is a trope that you find in other Miyazaki. Although usually the eating a lot becomes like a, when it's a gluttony thing, it tends to be portrayed as like something disgusting with an overly large belly. More like the fire prelates, I would say. And I've kind of wondered if maybe they are cannibalistic. You know, there's no real evidence to suggest that. They're wolves, not dogs. That's an interesting idea. That's an interesting idea. They're wolves. I don't know what that would imply, but I still don't really get wolves. I don't know what's going on there. He does lose his feet, so maybe he ate so much he became diabetic. Aldrich in DS3 becomes a disgusting mass due to his extreme gluttony. Yeah. Mesmer serpents also grow on his own body once the seal holding them back is shattered. Well, the winged serpents... The seal isn't holding back the winged serpents. The winged serpents are actually helping holding back the base serpent, or the abyssal serpent. So, slightly odd that there should be an abductor version. I just want to take a look at that once. So it's a weeping woman. Can I compare Arteria Leaf and Keller Bloom? I will do that once I get some Keller Bloom. There's 8 little swirly things here, which might connect to the Fell God. Got wrapped with serpents, a little baby. Weeping woman. This is totally schizo, but it looks a little bit like the Albinoric chainmail cowl. Radon losing his feet to dragging them on horseback might show he was originally a smaller size. Oh, I think he was definitely a smaller size. I mean, the fact that he had a normal horse, the fact that his throne in Morgoth's cutscene is smaller, the opening intro shows him fighting Morgoth, and he's smaller there. So I think he was definitely smaller and grew. So there's bits of flesh in here. Have I made up my mind about the gender of the fell god? I mean, this is actually a question that I think really could answer a lot if we could figure it out. Why does the furnace visage look so different to the face in the fire giant? Why does it have 2 eyes instead of 1? Why does it look vaguely feminine, I would say, in the furnace visage versus like a bearded cyclops? Those are totally different representations. There has to be an answer for that. One possibility is that it's not... one possibility is that they're just... like, one of them is mistaken, that the Horn Scent had nightmares about something which wasn't the Fell God. Or another possibility is that the Fell God could take multiple forms. Another possibility is that there have been multiple Fell Gods, like it's been in the same way that, you know, Marika can be succeeded by an Empyrean, maybe the Fell God could be succeeded by a different God of Fire. Could be that the Fell God is multiple people, like Radigan and Marika. But I think that is actually a really important piece of the puzzle there. Yeah, no, Furnace Visage, it literally says it is the face of the Fell God that haunts the sagas of the Horn Scent. So, it is the Fell God, and, you know, we're told the Fell God lurks within the Fire Giants, and we even have the One-Eyed Shield, which depicts that face, and it calls it the Fell God. So they are both explicitly depicting the Fell God, but they're completely different representations. So whatever is going on there, I think, is really important. It's god, not goddess. Yeah, no, Marika is called a god. That doesn't really matter. I mean, goddess or not. Melania is called a goddess, but I think that's the only goddess mentioned. And a god might be something... I mean, there's a lot of confusion with gods. Like, a god could be like a person like Marika, or it could be an outer god, or it could be like a spirit that inhabits a person. When you kill the Elden Beast, it says God slain. So there's all sorts of... You know, I don't think we should get hung up on the definition of what a god is exactly. It's just that this specific one, the Fell God, is depicted in... is explicitly called the Fell God and depicted in 2 completely different ways. Crunchy, do you think the abductor virgin is GEQ coded? Yeah, you know, I was looking at this, and that reminds me a little bit of the Godskin stuff. Certainly the snakes is GEQ coded. But the child... You know, the woman with the child, that's a statue we've seen before. We see it behind Mesmer, and it's also something that we've seen before in a lot of things like in in Dark Souls, which I think, I think for a long time everybody assumed it was the Nameless King. Like I'm thinking of this Sunlight Altar bonfire, or in the Undead Parish Church. I think there's a statue there as well. The woman with child. But I think maybe it was Tarnished Archaeologist or someone else that made a good point about that not being the Nameless King. So I might have to go back to that to look at that trope. It would make a lot of sense if this was Mesmer. Now we know that Raya was born of the Serpent's Amnion by some horrible ritual. So there is some precedent for thinking about, birth by snake. But yeah, this face to me looks actually quite a bit like the Furnace Visage. Let me just pull that up to take a look at it. So as Bonfire VN has pointed out, there are actually the face itself. Yeah, that's an interesting. There's the face. Is that similar? Maybe, maybe not. This is a very concrete interpretation, but couldn't you assume the Fell God fell from Terra Missoula, considering it's found in the mountaintops? I'm not opposed to the idea, but I do think the Japanese just means evil. Fell is like an ancient word for foul or evil. Like the Fell Omen, the Fell Curse. Where would I find this? What mentions the Fell God? The Shield. One of the spells for sure. Flame of the Fell God. Fire of the Evil God. Hidden inside. It's interesting. So, yeah, this word here. Oops. Evil God. Aku, that's like demon god. Evil God. Yeah, I don't think it's, So, at least in the Japanese, which, I'm not as, like, I don't necessarily believe that the Japanese is always the authoritative answer on things, because, two main reasons. One, the idea that, like, Miyazaki was present in a lot of the voice acting sessions and like giving them very, very specific instructions. And also George R. R. Martin's involvement. I think a lot of things might have, we just don't know. Things might have started in English and then gone to Japanese and then back to English. You know, certain aspects. So it's good to get another perspective. I think the Japanese is at least useful for that. Yeah, I think there are certain things that when you look at the Japanese, it gives you some insight, but um, but you know, there are certain things like the word crucible um, has all these connotations in English that I can't believe. I don't believe that a lot of those are there to the same degree in Japanese, and I also don't believe that they're unintentional either. So I feel like that word probably came from George R. R. Martin, or at least that they were. Well, who knows? I mean, Miyazaki studied, you know, Western culture. That was his, and he's you know, he's very well versed in all sorts of like occult, the occult tradition of Western Europe. So, um, you know, Japanese is not necessarily the be all end all of things. Hello, Cecilia. So, is this the one where he shows the movement? No, I want to look at that actually, because this is such an odd one. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but this is pretty neat. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. The faces actually have expressions. They're animated. So here. Isn't that interesting? But definitely, you know, face in pain or in sadness, which I think is relevant. God, that's so creepy. Closed eyes. Anyway, what was I looking at? Yeah, I wonder. And I wonder if they're abductor virgins. And then I was thinking about the whole Dominula ritual where young maidens play a central role and people who are filthy are, or no, people who are clean are skinned. Yeah. I don't know. They're very weird. Abductor virgins. Could be America depicted. It being a giant wicker man reminds me of how the fire giant sacrificed its leg to awaken the fell god. Plus how a maiden is required to light the Erd tree is highly interesting. Yeah, sacrifice. Sacrifice to the fire. That seems really important. And we'll get to that also when we look at the Gelmir cult and the hexes and things like this. There's also a theme of sacrifice there. Maiden blood is also required to be given audience with mode. Yes, that's true. Sacrifice to all things crucible. What was I trying to build towards? I wanted to use something. What was it? Oh, the winged scythe. That's what I wanted to do. So faith. I need to build up faith. Oh, I also forgot to look at some of the things that I acquired. Toxic mushroom, material leaf. We already looked at some of those. Whirl of flame. Fire beguiles those who gaze into it. And so the guardians of the flame are also its worshippers. Right, because the fire monks seem to have been appointed by America post-War with Giants to guard the flame, but then they also worship the flame. Which is odd. Beguiles. A record of crafting techniques left by a man who, unable to become a finger maiden, instead became a missionary. Crazy idea here. What if this guy was Anastasia? Because Anastasia is disguised as a finger maiden. What if that's actually just a dude? Who became a missionary. It's not the craziest idea I've ever had, actually. I think the fire monks were seduced by the flame, but maybe didn't originally worship it. Yeah, there's also something about the black flame monks. I'll have to look at that. I don't remember exactly what that said. We'll look at some of the Banished Knight stuff later, I think. It's shackle. It's odd, you know, these shackles kind of look a little bit like the stones inside the troll's chest. The Black Flame monks fled their duty out of cowardice, I believe it is said. Yeah. Yeah, which is odd. Cowardice. We looked at all these before. Okay, there wasn't anything too interesting there. Ah, too far. No. Okay, we're just gonna run through first and get all these items. Anastasia is type B, but it could be a programming concession. For all the vanilla player knows, he could be using pads. Yeah, there's also like Ensha. I don't know what to make of that. So, do not have the. I don't have a freaking lantern, bruh. What am I doing without a freaking lantern? We're gonna look at all this stuff once I die, which will be very soon, actually. Oh no! Don't use the mimic veil. What the heck? Let's use this. I am a certified Fell God worshipper. He seems a lot more honest than Marika. I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on there. Oh, I really hope I can grab this really quick. Come on, come on. Let's go, let's go. Stop tracking me. Why does that have such insane tracking? Let's go, let's go. Let's go. Let's freaking go. Alright, let's just grab these before I die. Any more little butterflies around? There we go. There's some more butterflies. I will sacrifice myself to the flower. The merchant on the southern peninsula coast sells a lantern? Yeah. Oh, crap. I thought I had leveled up. I'm so stupid. Why did I do that? Alright, let's quick grab that lantern. This is going to be a disaster, I think. A bit underpowered for this cave, probably. Glowstones are better than lanterns. Yeah, but I just don't want to have to, like, use a bunch of things for 2 seconds. I mean, rainbow stones are better than glowstones. I guess this is cut content, but Datacar is from the manor, and they seem to have changed sexes through the patches, so maybe the umbilical cord has something to do with that. And then by extension, Anastasia. Well, by the umbilical cord, do you mean the serpent's amnion? But yeah, that is true. The initial Datacar was about a guy who was the paramour of Rykard. We should probably buy those too. Maybe some stone sword keys. Alright, we're just gonna grab a bunch of stuff here. Let's do that. And how about... Okay.
Safe.
You're still wrong. Trina Torch wins. Brightness setting check. Actually, yeah, what is my brightness setting? I think I prefer the lower brightness. If we go to 1 or 0. It's nice and dark. I think it looks better. The magic light bulb. The beast propelling torch. Oh, that was too late. That was too late. Oh no, okay. That was alright. Nice. I do have glowstones right here, yeah. Okay. I also should use it. Yeah, actually, the lantern is my least favorite visually in terms of the light it gives off, but now, oh, before I do this, why don't we just look at all this stuff? So, Venomous Fang, one of the weapons designed for gladiatorial combat, used by duelists who are exiled from the Colosseum. The black fang protruding from the bronze snakehead is coated in deadly poison. Right, so snakes and gladiators. The practice of gladiatorial combat died out by the Age of Radigan. Which would imply Mesmer's crusade happened before that, which isn't that surprising, but helps establish the timeline. Malformed bow in the shape of a pair of poisonous snakes imbues arrows with poison through pagan magic, revealing its true worth when used with poison-infused arrows, used by assassins known as the Formless Serpents. It's interesting that snakes should be associated with poison in this particular place, because I can't think that they're associated with poison anywhere else. Elsewhere, they're just associated with fire, right? The serpent that ate Rykard spits poison at you. Oh, that's true. That's true. And there are those guys in Volcano Manor who explode into poison. Do serpent snails not spit poison? Do they spit poison? I guess I just always kill them quickly, so I never noticed. The kind of combat described in the Dueling Shield is called ritual combat, and the two Colosseum talismans are called ritual sword / shield. Any connection? Yeah, I sort of assumed that was referring to the gladiatorial combat. You get poisoned by serpent men in their grab attack? Serpent shield poisons you? Okay, that's actually a lot of associations. But serpents and poison, because poison is associated with rot. Right? Like there's the thingy about those who dwell within the rot know all too well, or those who dwell within poison know rot all too well, something like that. That's also interesting considering how Romina weaved some divine essence into the scarlet rot as a result of the sort of the burning of her temple. Also, that it's called pagan magic is interesting, because that is also what is referred to in the Winged Scythe, pagan belief. I think the impression is that snake / snake god worship predates the Erd Tree completely. Yes. Yes. What the hell even was Romina? That's a good question. I think there may be something with Romina where she created the scarlet rot, but not necessarily rot itself. Tried to join the Discord, but it's saying I need some kind of permission. Am I doing something wrong? I don't know. I thought it should just... Maybe I need to update the invitation. Let me see. I can just let me quickly do that on here. Romina is a saint. True, saint of the bud. Yeah, all this stuff about saints. I wonder now. Because we also have Saint Trina. Is there... Like, if Saint Trina and Mikla are meant to tell us something about Radigan and America. Was America the saint? Or was Radigan the saint? There's those statues of the guy with the big sword that I kind of think are Radigan. Actually, can I even edit this while it's live? Might not be able to edit it while it's live, but I should be able to post in the chat, so let me try that. Okay, there's a Discord invite. I'll fix it in the description afterwards, after the stream is done, because I don't think I can do it now. Those statues are discarded next to Godwin in Stormvale. Oh, what? The statues? You're talking about like the Godwin body down below Stormvale? It has those saint statues? That is interesting. This is very interesting. Alright, I hope this works. Stop it. Can you just stop blocking? God damn it. Nice. Okay. Alright, this will be fine. God damn it. Oh, nice. Easy peasy. Stormblade is just ridiculously overpowered. Alright, that's a bit nicer. Now I can actually get some levels out of this thing. Heavy rolling, really? So I'll take off my crown. In tune with the Crucible, meaning they're melded life forms. Plant people, animal people. This is coming out in your Trina video. I will be very interested to watch that. Sword Saint. Yeah. The tricky thing about comparing Mikla and Marika's ascension is that Mikla is said to be intentionally denying his heritage, so his path might vary from Marika's. Is he denying it? I don't think it was said in that way, but you're right that he is... It is not a one-to-one match, right? He is definitely doing things differently. In a way, he's trying to maybe succeed where Marika failed. Renouncing his heritage. Yeah, I'd have to look at exactly how that's said. It's divesting. Well, that kind of calls back to Ymir's line about, Mikla knew that his bloodline was tainted, his roots mired in madness. So it's like, yeah, he wanted to specifically mention that he threw away his birthright. It was when he shut his eyes. Oh, yeah. A little bit from Ansbach. Shed like a snake. Comparing Trina and Radigan could be a bit misleading. Well, I think, it's not necessarily that it's a one-to-one match, but I think clearly the story of Mikla is meant to inform us by analogy about Marika's story. You have to interpret it because it isn't a one-to-one match, but I think it is a way of talking about Marika's story without actually talking about Marika's story. Alright, we're gonna go kill Grail and just grab a lot of levels. This is a bit more sequence breaky than our exploration through Limgrave, but that's fine. The secret might be how Marika divested herself of Radigan. Maybe she did not leave him in a location beyond redemption like Mikla did. Radigan is a part of Marika? I mean, clearly there is... They are analogous because Saint Trina is called Mikla's other self, and Radigan, Marika calls Radigan her other self. So they are meant to be parallel in that sense. Considering how shamans can meld harmoniously, could be that Marika rejoined with Radigan at some later point, or that they were just entirely separate people at one point. I mean, early on. That's considered a part of the fraternal twins theory. Yeah. See, the reason I'm kind of back on the Radigan was a fire giant is there's two big pieces of evidence that support that. One is just the fact that the giant's red braid mentions Radigan at all. And this is apart from however it describes the curse, and you can get into the weeds about what exactly it's saying there, but the fact that it mentions Radigan it means that there's a connection between them. That isn't something you would put in a description unless you're thinking Radigan and fire giants are in the same category. And then the other reason to think so is because you have this, because Radigan and Renala's marriage is treated as this, Muriel calls it a miracle. It's this like special thing, which then him leaving her is like terrible, breaking an oath. And the reason that it's very special is possibly because it's like a revival of the alliance between the astrologers and the fire giants. And then you had much more explicit things in cut content, like the Sword of Night and of Flame, connecting that directly to the fire giants. So, you know, it's obviously not explicit and nothing is, but that kind of leads me to believe the fire giants. Also, a couple little things there, like not clear what the relationship is with the fire giants and the snakes. However, the serpent flail from the DLC, the weapon skill is called Flare O Serpent, which is like that same kind of wording how the fire giant incantations are, you know, O Flame, Burn O Flame, or whatever. You know, they're all that same type of language. So that might connect serpents and fire and giants, which then may connect Mesmer and his flame, and then Melina. Like, if Marika's first two children were fiery, and they were born from Radigan, and also the red hair, like, it would just make a lot of sense if Radigan was a fire giant. I think Radigan is the mortal aspect of Marika. After all, he is a Golden Order fundamentalist. Most item description associated with fundamentalism relates to math and science. In my opinion, math and science are way mortals try to comprehend how things work in their world. There's something maths and science cannot explain, i.e. spirits and souls. I don't think those are in a dichotomy in Elden Ring. I think there is a way of understanding the world through sort of gnosis or faith, and then there's a way of investigating the world. But you can investigate the magical... I mean, this has always been a part of Miyazaki's stories, is like the investigation, the scientific investigation of the rules of reality, even if those rules involve magic and spirits and things, that there's this kind of scientific investigation of how that stuff works. That's always been an element. So I don't see those as being opposed. Is that why Mesmer's flame looks like a mix between Fell Flame and Death Flame? I don't know. So Grail seems to have lots of horns. I never really noticed that. Like the Crucible. She's called the Mother of all Dragons, I think, so... It's a bit odd because she seems much more like a drake. And presumably she was the mate of Baal when they had all the drakes. I think that's the idea, but... have you watched the video on the... What was that? What's that comment? Have you watched the video on the Radigan / Velka parallel? Yes, that was a very good video. I enjoyed that a lot. I don't know if I don't know how much... I mean, it's interesting to draw the parallels, and I think it is worthwhile. Like, one of the things I've noticed while looking at Elden Ring is that every time I start to understand something more in Elden Ring, it ends up being more like Dark Souls than I initially thought. There's a lot of stuff it feels like, oh, they did something different from Dark Souls. And then you sort of start to understand it a bit better, and it actually turns out to be much closer to the Dark Souls tropes.
Mm.
So, it's worthwhile looking at the parallels, but I don't know what all of that is meant to lead you to with the Radigan Velka stuff. I don't know where that's meant to, what you're meant to do with that information. It is interesting to think about, like, I was also thinking about whether there's any, I think I asked in the Discord, is there any indication that Melina is related to dragons? Because if you take that same sort of perspective, Melina is kind of the same archetype as, like, what Priscilla was initially meant to be, Shanalot in DS2, what Yorshka was originally meant to be, and I have had this thing in the back of my mind for a while about, like, the dragon's heritage and dragon blood, and what is the relationship between dragons and the Elden Ring and Marika's rule and all of this stuff. There is? Not as strong on the DS lore, but I like that video because it specifically asked the question, who is Radigan, which I think is key, and I'm not sure it's been explored enough. Yes. I think my only real problem in that video is he sort of assumes a bit too strongly for my taste that the hooded statue is Radigan, and I don't know if that is necessarily the case. I think there's a decent argument to be made for that. Especially the way that it sometimes has a sword and sometimes a book. That's sort of, you know, the champion who's also a scholar that fits with Radigan. There isn't, like, a lot of evidence for it. Probably the only thing being, like, the misbegotten praying to it. Tish and Electo are Black Knife assassins that fight exactly like Melina, so there's a link there. If you look up Tyche and Electo in Greek mythology, a very specific statue with a woman holding a child with a headdress comes up. You can find a very similar statue to that in Fair Missoula. That feels like quite a number of hoops to jump through to find a connection. I think Melina and Black Knife style being similar could just be chalked up to Newman fighting style. I mean, this is still, I think, one of the big questions is how does the Eternal Cities and the Newman and the Nox fit into the timeline? That part of it is very odd. Because clearly, like, Melina's incantation, being this, you know, the minor Erdtree that Marika leaves at the Shaman Village, that kind of places her, like, very early on, I think. It makes sense that Mesmer and Melina are, like, the first brood, so to speak. But then if Melina has some relationship with the Black Knives, and America's of the same stock, she has close ties with them. What is the relationship between the shamans and the Black Knives? That's a very odd connection there. It's hard to fit that into the same system. What did I need? I want to use the winged scythe. I need 24 faith. Okay. Oh, damn, still not enough. We're so close. This close to greatness. Okay, we'll go back to this for the moment. I got your crunchy read above comment. Melina in the Black Knife Assassin's knees point inward, and they walk like they have weak legs, and they move swiftly like they weigh nothing, like they float. The shamans in jars walk the same way. That is a really interesting observation. That's a really interesting observation. I do remember that about the shamans. Oh, not the invisible one. Mm. I don't know if it doesn't look like the knees are that weak. Hmm. It could just, yeah, it could just be like a trying to show some kind of feminine, more feminine, demure posture or something. But it is interesting to think about the relationship between the Albinorics and the Nox and the Newman and the Shaman. Hmm. Tanith keeps her feet a bit like that. No fighting. Whoa. She doesn't do any of these moves in the Morgoth fight. Oh, yeah, I wonder if the knee thing is just it's meant to be a more, like, feminine coded gait. And fight some Jar Saints and compare. And there she summons the tree when she dies. I don't even know what to look up exactly. Shaman Jar. No, it's very bowed inwards. Well, it's much more exaggerated with the Jar Shamans. I wouldn't say it's nowhere near as extreme with Melina or the Black Knife Assassins. You have to catch the Black Knives and Melina walking to see it? Also, what is this? What is that? That's a downward arc. That's like the Rune of Death. But then what's all this stuff? I sort of had this idea that maybe the shaman are albinarics. And that somehow because they're made of silver, that's what makes them blend better. Um, mm, yeah, they do definitely have bowed legs. It's definitely a lot less extreme. There is a weird. I see what you mean. There is a weird like. There's a weird It's like they're struggling to walk. Huh. This one is wounded, though. Does this one share animations with the others? It's a good question. I believe it's all the same. Yeah, and like when she leaps forward, she uses her left hand. It was pointless watching like cheese videos. I believe it's the same animations. I couldn't tell with this fucking dragon head in the way. Yeah, there's still that bowed inwards movement. Just summon Tish? I don't have Tish. You can't get that until after you finish Ronnie's quest. Yeah, it's definitely the same animation there. Very interesting. Do I have a bow? Yes. I wonder, the putrescence... Putrescence, the Claymen, the Ancient Dynasty, the Nox, the Nightfolk, the Newman, the Shamans, the Carians. It's far too many different factions. It's, Oh, let's read the, map. Where's that? Well, first of all, Dragonheart. Oh, and you know what I forgot? We also haven't done Agil. Agil. We'll do that at some point. Maybe I'll do that off stream. Dragonheart. Riddled with gravelstone. Faded earthly flower, gravelstone. This grotesque organ continues to beat vivaciously. Yeah. They're immortal. Dragons are immortal. Even the drakes are immortal? In a sense. Everything is immortal until the rune of death is restored. Maybe. Maybe. It's really not clear what the Rune of Death does. Kind of weird that drakes only have rocks in their hearts and not anywhere else. They made a living wall before the Rune of Death shenanigans. I mean, stuff about the Dragonkin mentions that the Dragonkin did not achieve immortality in comparison to their Skyborn kin, which means that the ancient dragons were immortal, and that doesn't seem to be particular to the Rune of Death or its relationship. Interesting that you find this in Caelid, because you also find the regalia of Eocade in the jail cave. Those both seem to be related to Elimer. So I wonder why he was here, or why this has some relationship to Eocade. It's because ancient dragons have their own Elden Ring. Maybe they're immortal because they can live after death inside dreams? Or maybe it's because they have some control over time. Right, because the ancient dragon scales lightly twist time. Or at least the... Is it just the scales of the Dragon Lord that twist time? I definitely don't have any dragon scales here, so...
I know.
Have you seen that one Sekiro Doobie Cut video showcasing the Tarnished kneeling to the Rune of Death in the cutscene after Malekith? Yeah, I watched that a while ago. I don't really remember if there was anything super interesting about it. I don't know if there was something really relevant there. When Bale betrayed Placidusax, Lorsax says that he became a sworn enemy of the Brood. Immortality seems often exaggerated. For example, spirit is eternal, but frenzy can melt it. Well, then it's not eternal, is it? If they have their own Elden Ring, then they have their own laws, of which immortal life may be one. Their Elden Ring in Azula. If we get ancient stones from dragons other than Placi, then his scales may be analogous to Grace. I mean, I was just thinking with this Nameless Singer video that I watched, where she was making the point that basically, like, the discovery, the great technology of Rao was the discovery that spirits could be bound to stone, which I think is actually a really good point. That is the whole point of the sprite stone stuff. Sounds good, Discerning Tarnish. I will check that out. So the sprite stone stuff, I think, because that struck me as such an important little tidbit of information, and it getting to something really deep. And also this Rao, there's this sort of light and the sort of darkness. It's like they start to understand something really, really basic about how magic works in this world. And so I think that's a really good observation, that there's something special about the fact that you can bind spirits to stone. And you can see that, I think, with the Crystalians, that they're inorganic beings, yet they live. You see it with Glintstone. Glintstone is a kind of stone that has sort of life in it. You see it with the golems, and so with the dragons, the idea that they have, like Placidusax, for example, they're made of stone, but they have gold inside. See, I think in Dark Souls, the implication was that, like, the dragons were they were like non-beings. They were literally just stone. But then, with fire came disparity in life and death. So the reason the dragons could be killed, even though they were initially immortal, is because fire was sort of introduced to the world, because life was introduced to the world. Before that, they were neither alive nor dead. They were just... It was like they were imbued with life, which gave them mortality, and then you could kill them. And I sort of wonder if it's the same thing, that, like, the dragons were initially just stone, and then they were imbued with gold, which actually made them mortal, and able to be killed. I wonder if it's something like that. I do not want to fight the Misbegotten and Crucible Knight. So... the gold is what gives them immortality? Well, it's the scales which give them immortality, right? The scales are drained of color. Yeah, this brings us back to the drained of color thing. Look at dead ancient dragons. They have no gold. Yeah. But it could be that, like, once gold becomes a thing, then you have this division of life and death. And therefore, if you have gold, you're alive, and if you don't, you're dead. But maybe before that, before there is gold... maybe they were neither alive nor dead. Something like that, if that makes sense. I did watch the Elden Dork video. Yeah, I was talking about that earlier. Seath uses a crystal to give himself immortality, as opposed to the rock of the ancient dragons in Dark Souls. So did America creating gold... Did America creating gold and shadow predate the ancient dragons? Well, what I'm saying is maybe the ancient dragons were different. Maybe they were literally just like stone, inorganic beings that were neither dead nor alive. And then with the introduction of gold, maybe they became mortal. So
You're new around. Surprised you. No matter. Why don't... Oh, but don't ask me.
okay. There's the crystal dart. Yeah, maybe... I'm just spitballing here. There's not really any evidence to suggest this, but just the fact that they have gold inside of them, and then the trailer, you know, it's like America's Ascension is the beginning of gold and shadow. If the dragons were literally just stone and neither dead nor alive, and then once gold is introduced, then they're imbued with gold, which makes them alive, but it also means they can die. Come on, just grab this freaking thing. Oh my god, shut up. When you say ancient dragons were not alive, do you think they could move around? Did they have a civilization? I don't know. Shut up. God, you're the most annoying shit. Stop. Why does this track you from a million miles away? Yeah, I don't know. I'm just... I don't even know if I really believe this. I'm just sort of proposing it. If you're looking at things with the perspective of, like, Miyazaki is just writing the same story over and over again, but trying to do, like, variations and kind of get it right in his mind, then you would look at, like, the Age of the Ancients and Ancient Dragons in Dark Souls and use that to arrive at some conclusions in Elden Ring about the dragons. I guess my point being, what does alive really mean? If you can move and think but not be alive, maybe answering that, what is life really, is a central philosophical mystery here. Well... yeah. It's interesting because now with the Golden Order, you have something which is a kind of immortality. You know, it's the abnegation of death. Is that the same as, like, the dragon's immortality? And then Marika is made of stone at the end, right? So... The tree looking real transparent. Oh yeah. And then as soon as we get a little closer, it stops. we're gonna go back and do all of Liurnia right now, but basically I'm just gonna go speed run to Altus so that I can trigger the Red Mane Festival and fight Radahn. And yeah. The Crystalians, Albinorcs, and those who live in death aren't even alive by our scientific standards. Well, the Albinorcs... I mean, the Albinorcs are just artificially created, right? But that doesn't mean, that they are dead in any real sense, right? Or like undead or anything like that. It's not like the Crystalians are a bit more strange because they're inorganic, whereas the Albinorcs seem to be at least sort of, they seem to be kind of organic, more organic. Sorry, yeah, I forgot to turn off my phone. Is Data a living being? You mean from Star Trek? Yeah, I mean, if you say... You could say that there's organic life and inorganic life, and then that kind of solves a lot of those issues, right? Yeah, I don't know. There's something about silver as well, which I don't really get. Like, why does gold invite runes, but silver invites items? Silver invites riches. It's like silver is absent of something. It's absent of sunlight. And the Albinorcs are outside of the Erdtree's grace. There's something about... There's something about silver that's important there, because the Albinorcs and the Nox... I mean, I always sort of assume that the Nox created the Albinorcs, which I guess is not really confirmed. But considering that the Albinorcs were made from silver and they created the silver tiers, it seems likely. I just don't get why everyone seems to have biological immortality if the Rune of Death's removal only affects demigods and grace only affects chosen tarnished. Well, part of my way of making sense of all of that, I'm still not... It's so unclear what the Rune of Death actually does. I feel like a lot of people just assume that it works a certain way. But in order to come to any conclusion, you have to kind of ignore certain things and pay attention to others. Like, you can look at how the bosses don't revive, that, you know, the demigods don't get revived when you kill them, but normal enemies do. But then, you know, all of the demigods besides Moog and Radahn basically continue to exist in some form after you kill them. So they're, like, not completely dead also, in the strictest sense. And then plus there's also, like, just random normal bosses that disappear after you kill them. So there doesn't seem to be any consistency in gameplay um, in terms of how death and resurrection works. But I think one way that this could be explained is if the Rune of Death specifically applied to gods and demigods, or like some god aspect, the divine, it's specifically about that. But then the divine blood, or like that divine aspect, was shared with everyone via the Erd tree. So like grace, you know, because there's a Christian parallel there, like communion, that you're literally imbibing the blood of Christ. So if you think of grace as a kind of communion where America's divine aspect is shared with everyone who receives grace, then that would also, maybe that divine aspect, if Destined Death specifically applied to that, then it would also apply to the grace, if that makes sense. I really love the way you tied the Rune of Death to your idea of the spirit world. Not sure if you still believe that. Your fated death is the birth of your other self. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if I ever believed it exactly. I don't not believe it, and I don't know what to me, that's like, there's things that point in that direction. There's things that point in, you know, there's such an emphasis put on death and rebirth, and so there's things that point at that kind of interpretation, that like, if you die and then you are reborn as someone else, then that other person is you, but they're not you. So there's like a connection. And then if the whole aspect of dying and not dying and rebirth is screwed up, and maybe time is also screwed up, then maybe, you know, your future reincarnation could be simultaneous with you. Yeah, I just don't, it's just an idea, and I don't know how to like support it or argue against it necessarily. Grace manifesting in the eyes reflects one's faith in America's order. Then with the iris of grace, America can basically enforce blind faith. Also, do you think D is Godwin's Millicent? Whoa. No, but is there a reason to think that? I mean, I like how crazy that sounds. So, is there... of them is missing their souls. Golden Order takes them in when no one else does. Thea returns the curse mark to D, etc. Hmm. And his quest ends in a similar way to Millicent, too. His quest ends in a similar way to Millicent. In what sense? He will die at what has become of his Godwin. D and his brother each of us. No, D and his brother have one soul. They have 2 bodies and 2 minds, but 1 soul. What would the... no, you did not miss the Raya Lucaria stream. I'm sequence breaking right now. I will be going through all of Liurnia. I just wanted to run to Altus so that I can trigger Radahn's festival, so I want to get to the DLC, and then I'm going to be doing Liurnia alongside the DLC. The thing with Millicent is that there is this implication that, like, okay, Melania... because Melania resisted the Scarlet Rot, but then she abandoned her sense of self. She abandoned her pride, her dignity. And there's like a very literal sense of that, right? She abandons her sense of self. Because she loses her sense of self, she literally loses her sense of self. And that's how these sort of offshoots pop up. So what would be the parallel kind of thing for Godwin there? Is his half-death? That doesn't seem to me as obvious. I'm not sure how the parallel would work there. I've definitely never considered this before, so... There's also a parallel with Gary wanting Millicent to be taken by the Rot, maybe with Fia wanting D/Godwin to be the same with Death. It's an interesting idea. I just haven't really thought about that. To me, D always seemed like a way to talk about America and Radigan, and just the strangeness of identity, but I'm not sure exactly what. See what I wrote above? There's a bunch of seeming mechanical similarities, but that's just because of the way souls and identity work in the game, not because D and Millicent are supposed to be viewed as parallels. Well, the parallels, I think there's a lot of things in the game which are meant to... They're different stories that are meant to talk about similar things. So even if they're not, you know, specifically about the same thing, or even if this specific, like, plot of each individual story is different, they might all be talking about... It's sort of like going back to... America and Radigan versus Mikkel and St. Trina, that those are different stories, right? There's a similarity in that they both become gods, but, like, they're different stories, there's different plots, different characters, different things involved, they have different agendas, but they're covering similar themes, and so that one is a way to talk about the other. So I could see maybe something about D's quest is there is some kind of parallel there, even if it's a completely different story. It just see I failed to see the there's a very specific reason that Melania has all these different versions of herself, right? Because it's this very strong metaphor of like she loses herself to the mission, so to speak, right? She is defined by this resistance to the scarlet rot, which has been afflicting her. It's like she has this integrity, she has this will to resist it, but then in the moment that she folds and the scarlet rot, she succumbs to it, and so in that moment she loses her sense of identity, and that metaphor is represented literally with the division of herself into all these different people. So I don't see something where I don't see like a metaphor for D that would make sense in the same way. D is accepted by the Golden Order because of his condition when no one else would. Then also D is golden and silver. The fact I think Godwin was something like an Albinauric more and more is also affecting my thought process, I guess. Just seems like tons of parallels, and I thought it might mean something. I get you, though, but Godwin dying could also be something similar. Like, Godwin is defined by the Golden Order, but he gets stabbed by Destined Death. Yeah, well, and maybe there is, I mean, maybe, like, half of him dying is... Because he does have, like, a weird multiple identity thing with the Deathroot, right? Like, his face is appearing on crabs and Deathroot all over the place. So there is a parallel there. Yeah, I would, I'll have to think about that one. Renala is an Albinauric akin to the Towering Sister, such as Raya's connection with Castle Sol, where there were once Albinaurics, ruled by Godwin, the Stormlord Albinauric who rode a dragon. Yeah, I'll have to think about that one. Gold and silver. You think that's schizo? That doesn't seem that crazy to me. Renala seems like an Albinauric. She's very similar to the Towering Sister in appearance. They had a connection with Castle Sol. That's where you get the Ice Rind Hatchet and the Hoarfrost Stomp. Godwin is probably connected with Castle Sol and the Banished Knights and the Storm people. The idea that the Stormlord would be someone who rode a dragon, I mean, just looking at the perspective of, parallels to Dark Souls, that would make sense. And Godwin is definitely a fairly strong parallel with the Nameless King. Yeah, the idea of the Albinaurics, there's something very important about the Albinaurics. Something very important about the Albinaurics that I don't quite get yet. In the way that Latenna refers to Lobo as her other half. Godwin Melusine, the Dragon Queen who danced her golden ring eternal. I don't know what Melusine is from. I feel like she says other half because she can't walk without him. I mean, yes, ostensibly that's true. But there is something odd about how wolves are the shadows of the Empyrean, and wolves are also the beast of the Carrion Royal Covenant. As if there's this very direct relationship between, like, America and the whole gold stuff and all the Golden Order and Malekith and all of that, versus the moon. That there's a connection there is odd. But seriously, though, are we sure Godwyn is Godfrey's son? The only reason to... Well, the strongest reason to suspect that he is Godfrey's son is because he is called a scion of the Golden Bough, and Godfrey is the patriarch of the Golden Lineage. The demigods were Godfrey and his children, the Golden Lineage. So that would be the strongest evidence. Godwyn is never said explicitly to be the child of Marika or Godfrey. He's never said explicitly to be part of the Golden Lineage. He is a demigod, or he was a demigod. So, you know, we have one item description which says that the first demigods were Godfrey and his children, the Golden Lineage. And then we also have Ennius telling us that the demigods are each and all the offspring of Queen Marika. But I mean, who knows? We've got all sorts of, like, weird gods and things, and Rykard and Radon supposedly became demigod stepchildren after Radagon married Marika. So it's not as if demigods couldn't be introduced into the family rather than born from it. Wolves are in so many different places. You know what other species is? Human. Maybe wolves are a really foundationally important species. Yeah. I don't know. I think I am going to end this stream here on a nice big question mark about Godwyn. I think next stream we'll try and maybe rush to the DLC. So, you know, we're not going too methodically yet. I just want to get to the DLC so I can start really looking at stuff there in detail. But that's pretty good for now. So, I appreciate everyone stopping by. What was the question mark? Oh, just, I guess, Godwyn being a child of Marika or Godfrey. Could Godwyn be Mesmer's other half? That's usually the opposite sex, right? That wouldn't make much sense. I don't know. Godwyn is a big question. Anyway, thanks for stopping by, everyone. I will see you all next time, and I'll update the link in the description to this video, so that should be good for anyone who's not there already. So, see y'all later.